Hi there, I'm Natasha Ryan with Premier Risk Solutions, and this is our video series, Strong, Safe, and True. It's a chance for us to sit down with experts in the security sector and talk about today's issues and how to create a more safe workspace for your company and for your employees. And today we have Dr. Michael Corcoran with us, a friend of Premier Risk Solutions, and a little bit about your background, first of all, Dr. Corcoran.
Sure, Natasha. I started in 1970 when I entered the United States Secret Service. I was fortunate enough to be assigned to what they call a Protective Intelligence Squad for most of my tenure with them. And what I learned there was to interview those people that said they want to kill the president or vice president. And so not only developing profiles of those individuals, but determining the true risk for the potential of violence was a big thing. I learned a lot of the skills there. And to hone the skill, I went back to school and got my doctorate in behavioral science. And so now I've just kind of taken that forward. And now in my own practice that I started in 1988, I do the same thing I did in Secret Service, but for companies and Fortune 500 groups and school districts and hospitals and everything just around the country. And groups like Premier Risk, of course, throughout North America, some Europe, some Asia, but certainly get a lot of varied and different types of cases all the time.
And Dr. Corcoran, I mean, we've had a lot of discussions in previous sessions and just in general. The main focus here, of course, is to provide corporations with, the actionable items so they can make their employees feel empowered and able to handle situations. And a big component of that is mental health. And one of the things that we're talking about today is the mental health of the security personnel that are actually on site, that are in charge of protecting people, because we've seen some pretty volatile environments lately with the riots, protests, everything. So, and concerns from guards themselves or personnel. So I want to talk a little bit about the anxiety that you're seeing from security personnel now more than ever about working or not working for some certain, for some companies. Talk a little bit about that for me.
Absolutely. Sometimes they happen to know a particular company has had some issues in the past, or they feel that they may in fact attract some type of individual that would want to do them harm or do property damage. And so they start building that up in their own minds because oftentimes, unfortunately, as we know, a security guard's job can be seemingly somewhat boring. It's just kind of sitting around and watching for things to happen. So unfortunately, they start ruminating, they start thinking about things, and they let this kind of stuff build and build. So it's important that, first of all, whatever company you decide to go with, as far as picking a security officer, that they've approached this subject with their security guards, and that they've given them some good information about it, and that most importantly, the security officer realizes that this is their job. This is what they're supposed to do. If they have some concerns, certainly voice those concerns and let people discuss that. If they have a concern with something, and it wouldn't even hurt for the employer, oftentimes called the client, because you've hired a security guard company. So now you're the client for the security guards, but nothing wrong with going around and asking them every once in a while. So how are things? Do you have any concerns here? And let them voice their concerns. I had one individual once that said he wasn't going to work anymore at a company because the company began demonstrating with a flag, not demonstrating, but they put out a flag. It's an old flag. It comes back from the American Revolution, for heaven's sake. It was a yellow flag. It has a coiled snake on it and had the words, "Don't tread on me." And it was made up by the Colonial Marines, I think, way back when. And now a lot of organizations have taken that flag on as to mean First Amendment rights, gun rights, those kinds of things. And so a lot of people have pros and cons when they see that flag. But I had one company that was flying that flag, and the security guard just flat out said, "I'm not going to work there anymore. It goes against my principles." So those are the kinds of things that they have to be aware of.
Okay. All right. And, with the riots and the protests and demonstrations, coming from a news background, I always tell people, you can be in a completely peaceful situation and it takes 0.01 seconds for that to totally shift, and now you're in the middle of mayhem. Are you seeing any mental health after fact, or, you know, maybe they're a little more cautious about taking those kind of jobs because of all of the protests and riots we've seen in recent times?
I think that then goes to the concept of what kind of a security guard are you going to get? What company are you going to hire to bring in your security guard folks? And it could go for the employee as well, or the now client who hires the security guard. They may want to do some of this as well, but training becomes a key factor. And I know like Premier Risk certainly trains their people and constantly gives them updates on things. So that's a great idea, because it isn't just in training on, you know, here's how you look for things and observe things, but psychological preparation.
Right.
In fact, we call it the 5 P's for success. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. So you got to kind of keep all that in mind when you've got security on your premises. And of course, the question becomes too, if in fact you decide you want security, why did you get it? And at what point is it okay to no longer have it? Did you decide to bring it on because you had a real concern? Okay, well, what's happening now that you no longer have that concern? This is a liability issue, but it's something I think that anybody that's looking at hiring anybody in the security industry should take a look at and be aware and be prepared for.
And then, you know, we talked a little bit about concerns over insider threats. You know, like if you have a security guard that seems a little shifty, or, you know, how do you spot this as an employer? I mean, you've hired this person to come in and make everything safer, and now you're kind of looking out for that person too.
Totally agree. And here's the misperception of insider threats. So as soon as we hear insider threats, we're thinking of cybersecurity or
Right.
the IT team. But it goes much deeper than that. In fact, FBI has done a lot of research in this, and they've shown that it really kind of goes back to a workplace violence prevention program. If you have a real adequate workplace violence prevention program, you're really on keynote path to really be aware of insider threats. We look for primarily changes in behaviors, the way people behave. You get a normal guard that may be normally quite happy and always smiling. All of a sudden, he's kind of glum and he doesn't even say hello to people. So most of the time, however, it's a misperception. The guard feels that he's not been treated fairly, or he hasn't been given the right hours or the right shifts or things of that nature. And oftentimes that can be corrected fairly easily by getting together with the guard company and asking for a change. But otherwise, insider threats covers a myriad of things, such as malicious mischief, workplace violence, property damage, all kinds of things. So my advice to my clients is to just be aware of primarily the individual's behavior, and realize that unfortunately, sometimes it's just their misperception of what's going on, and then having to react to that. So it's an ongoing thing. I once had a guard who was so upset that what he did is he bought a cell phone that was what we call a burner phone.
Yeah.
And he started making threatening calls to the CEO, saying he was going to bomb the place. Now, people have had bomb threats before, but this was the phone number went right to the CEO. It was the CEO's personal number. Where did he get that? And we kind of narrowed it down to this one guard. And he said, well, you know what? I did have my cell phone stolen the other day. It was only missing for about an hour, and I got it back. But, you know, that's what happened. And it certainly wouldn't be me. Why would I be making those calls? And eventually, of course, we figured out that it was. But those are the kinds of things that can happen. And generally, it's a misunderstanding, or just their own misperceptions of what's going on.
Yeah. And I would like to point out that Premier Risk, with our employees, we actually employ people science to kind of get a look inside, so that we adequately match the right type of person to the right type of job. So we try to mitigate this so we don't deal with this kind of situation. But important to look at, especially in today's environment. We can do any of these services. Dr. Corcoran can come in. We can have him come do consulting for you, risk assessments, workplace violence mitigation, and security personnel on site. That includes armed, unarmed. If you have any questions about any of these services, my name, phone number, email right there, Natasha Ryan. Dr. Corcoran, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, as always, for coming on to our series with us. And to all of you watching, please continue to come back to our website because we're going to do these chats on a regular basis. So you'll see much more of this. And again, we're focusing on relevant issues in today's world to help you make your workplace safer. Until then, I'm Natasha Ryan. Stay strong, safe, and true. Thanks, everyone.